Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Secure Insights. I'm excited to be joined today by Nate, the CMO of 7AI, as we dive into the world of Agentic AI, a fresh and evolving concept that's changing the way we really think about the SOC. We'll unpack what Agentic AI and security really means, how it differs from the traditional SOC tools, and also fully understand how 7AI managed to launch their platform 4 months ahead of schedule. It's going to be a great one, and as always, would love to hear your feedback.
This is going to be fun. So I'm Nate Burke. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at 7AI. I've been in cybersecurity for a very long time. Before 7AI, I was at a company called Exonius, where I was the first US employee. I started before we had a product. I left after we had 100 million in revenue. That was a very fun 6 years. I got a lot of stories. I'm sure we'll touch on that. Before that, I was at one of the early SOAR companies that was acquired by Microsoft. We only existed for 18 months before we got acquired. And then years before that, I was at one of the early CASB companies called CloudLock before CASB was a thing that anybody talked about. So been around, done this a few times. In a lot of cases, almost all of them, I start very early on. And when I'm lucky, I get to see it through to something that people really use, and it changes the way people do security work.
Fantastic. So you're known for the kind of early stage startup space.
I love it. I love the part where you have the audacity to bring something to market. And it's even better when it's something people use and love.
Fantastic. Okay, well, thank you for kind of giving just a little bit of background there, and we will touch upon everything throughout this conversation. I guess I wanted to kind of start off with just diving into the concept that's really starting to, I think, kind of reshape the way we think about AI in security, and of course, that's agentic AI. So talking about how AI that doesn't just assist, but almost kind of acts as somewhat like a teammate as well. If we kind of kick this off with running through the basics, what is kind of agentic security and agentic AI, and how does it differ from the, I guess, traditional security measures, but of course, the more specifically AI security tools?
Yeah, I think at the very highest level, I think the biggest differentiator is it does the work. And so what I mean by that, and let me give an example that I always like to give, because it's one thing to talk about AI and to talk about it at like the academic level, but when you think about it in use, I think you really get it. So one of my biggest pet peeves in life is expense reports. And we talked about this, and I talk about it a lot, right? So I'm on the road a lot. I'm about to go to the Gartner Summit on Sunday. So I go to a lot of things for work. And when you do that, you end up spending money that you need to get reimbursed. And so what I end up doing is getting a bunch of receipts, throwing in my bag. I inevitably lose some. And then at some point in the future, because I put it off as long as I can, I then say, oh, okay, I've got to do this thing. So I take time on my calendar and I block it. And then I find those receipts, and then I take pictures of those receipts, and then I remember what they are, and then I categorize them. And I'm saying, wait a second, there's got to be a better way. What if we could have something that says, all right, you're connected to the credit card I use for work, so I can, get points and stuff. And so I just use this one credit card for work. If I had an AI agent that could connect to my credit card, then also connect to my Google Calendar, connect to my JetBlue account, connect to my Marriott account, it could then see all of those expenses. It could then bring them in. It can then categorize them for me, and then just give me a screen that says, approve these. Because when I buy a snow globe for my daughter at the airport, I don't want to submit that. But just imagine all of that time that I could get back, the money I could get back on the things that I lose, forget about, or just decide it's not worth the hassle. That is something that could be done in the background. And so the way that we're approaching this idea of agentic security is, instead of replacing people, instead of being an AI SOC analyst like we're seeing out there a lot, we want to just take on that non-human work, the stuff that is manual, super repetitive, yet essential. It has to be done. And so this idea of agentic security is, since everything has an API now, why don't we just have something that can connect to those sources that can create alerts, right? Your endpoint detection, your cloud, your identity, all of these different providers, even the SIM or a SOAR or whatever, anything that can produce an alert. We then have an AI agent that looks at it and says, oh, this is a user-reported phishing alert. I know what to do. I can then call on these little AI agents. And I think it helps to define our terms here. In our definition, an AI agent is a small piece of LLM in the cloud that has a mission, it has reasoning, and has access to tools to perform its tasks, right? So in that user reported phishing example, right? So one agent fetches the email. One agent does a semantic analysis. What are the words being used? Is it aggressive? It is asking for gift cards, right? Another agent, it only exists to know URL reputation. If there's a link in there, it'll say, all right, what is that link? I'm going to look at virus total. Is this known bad? No? Let's move on. Another agent says, there's a file attachment. Let's look at this file. Let's do a hash, and then instead let's detonate it in a sandbox. Let's look at the behavior. It's bad? Okay, stop. Another agent then says, who else has downloaded this file? All of these things have very, very limited scopes, but in the totality of the investigation, they're performing all of this end to end. And these are things that'll take people, between half an hour or 2.5 hours, bouncing from screen to screen, looking at different things, and it can do it just in minutes. And so when we think of agentic security, it is that idea of taking on those non-human tasks, doing it in a way that an analyst would do at the speed that a machine can do, and then handing back those results to an analyst. So instead of the person doing all those manual tasks, the person gets the result and decides what to do.
Yeah, it's kind of streamlining that process, and AI agents are good at, obviously, like you said, they're kind of handling the repetitive and I guess kind of noisy almost tasks.
Yeah.
And you mentioned there it's about the humans and AI kind of working together.
Yep.
What kind of part, I guess, of the SOC workflow is best suited for AI and AI agents, and what still needs the human touch?
I think it's the easy answer to that is where the people are spending the most time with the lowest value, right? So it is those small tasks, those I'm looking something up. One of the other examples we see all the time, excuse me, and we hear this as people describe it as the bane of my existence. And this is the atypical travel alert. And if you're in security, you're either shaking your head or rolling your eyes. It's kind of the same thing, right? Where I get an alert that someone has logged in Dallas, Texas, and in Denver, Colorado at the same time. That's impossible, right? And a person has to look at that because that could be an account takeover, that could be bad. But if what you're saying is this happens every day, they're using a VPN. We know that. So think of all of that a person has to do and saying, well, wait a second. An AI agent can look at that and say, I'm going to do a reverse IP lookup. I know it's NordVPN. I can look at that user's profile. I know they're in sales and they're allowed to use NordVPN. They've satisfied MFA. There's no other weird logins. This is fine, right? So just multiply that by the hundreds of different things that you have to look at many different systems. And that's where you can just say, like, I don't want to be doing that. And in fact, I think, we can say a lot of stuff about our product or about our approach or about whatever, but I think it's better when I hear it from someone else. And one of the CISOs that we've talked to on our podcast that we're releasing, I think next week, fingers crossed, he said, the moment it clicked for me about this idea of agentic security and AI agents is when I finally realized we don't need to be doing these things faster. We have to ask, like, why are our people doing these at all? And I think really that is the answer. And then if you take that mindset and apply it to where work is being done, where people are just reacting and they're doing the same thing over and over and over again, and not being strategic and not being proactive and not fixing the root cause of things, that's where I think the entry point is. And then once you start and figure out a few use cases, then in every case with our customers, it becomes, but what about this? And how about, what if we could do this? And then how about this data source? And you start to see that light bulb. And once you do that and the people that are doing that work don't have to do that anymore, it's like it's magic.
Yeah, well, you mentioned it there, kind of being moving from being reactive to more of a proactive kind of security measure, reducing that alert fatigue, and actually enabling the analyst to, and using your words, kind of focus on those strategic tasks, which is exactly what they're wanting to do. And
Yeah.
it, like you said, it frees up their time. So yeah, thank you for kind of running through that. And you mentioned kind of previously about how this all kind of connects into, I guess, current like security platforms. So how are these AI agents kind of connecting into, I guess, like EDRs, SOARs, kind of acting as that collaborator?
Yep. It's all through read-only API connections. And And that's important to point out for two reasons. One is if it's just read-only API connections, that kind of gets rid of that first barrier of, is it going to do something destructive, or is it going to change my workflow, or any of those things. So that's the first part, is it's really easy to try out, right? The second part is, as we're starting, and this is the same in the days of SOAR, which is it's all about the barrier to trust, right? I don't know if I trust this thing. And I definitely don't trust it yet to do remediation actions or change permissions or any of those things that could be destructive or could cause all kinds of havoc, right? So when we're starting out with customers, it's all through those read-only connections. At a certain point, they're saying, okay, you gave me the result, but like, can you actually just stop this and fix it and whatever? And in that case, we can have elevated permissions and do things that are write access or just higher permissions. But to start with, we've decided like we're not even going to begin with those remediation actions. We can do them, but until you have that level of trust, I think that becomes a barrier. So I would rather show you the results and have you say like, okay, now I trust all of this, than start off by saying, let's do everything end to end, including remediation. So all of it is just read-only API connections. And the way that we do it at 7AI, it's two things. One is those API connections to those sources capable of producing an alert. Right? You mentioned EDR, cloud, identity, whatever, or the SIM. And then the second part is, what are the other data sources that will give context to the investigation? So, for example, we could read from a ticketing system, or again, like with the SIM, to get more contextual data if you're putting a lot of information in there. So it's show me the thing that can give me an alert, and then show me the data that can help add context and enrich the data for that investigation, and give me also like pivot points. So in that example I gave earlier on, the user reported phishing one, I want to be able to see not only in this one specific incident, did the person, download the file? Is it an email that someone else got? So I want to be able to pivot there. Is it something that another user has the same file? And those sort of like pivot points to be able to say, we don't want to just do one investigation. We want to solve the problem. So it's those two things.
Fantastic. And you mentioned there kind of about trust, and I guess that's between kind of the customer and these AI agents. And I think it's really a recurring theme when it comes to
Yeah,
anything to do with
of
AI.
course.
Even thinking about kind of ChatGPT, which I think probably 99% of people use on the daily for even just
Of
writing
course.
small tasks. I guess, how do you build that confidence between the analyst and then the AI agents?
Yeah. So for us, and I totally agree with this because I lived through it in the SOAR days, which was, we would say that we're automating all these steps. And then they're saying like, so show me. We're like, actually, it's a black box and we're not going to show you anything. And we're taking the exact opposite approach here, which is every single step we show what the agent is, what the mission of that agent is, the queries that they're writing to the systems, the response they get back, and the way they make the determination. So in the course of a POC, we'll have everything, every step along the way is documented. Not only is it documented, but you can even take the code that the AI agent wrote and just test it yourself. And we encourage that.
Wow.
Like
Yeah.
validate it. Go look. Because I think without seeing every step, then you're just saying, I can't trust this thing. But if you can see every single thing documented, then not only are you able to see it, but you can test it on your own and make sure that you get the same results. So to me, like without that full documentation, you're not going to have complete trust. So we go way on the other end of that trust spectrum, to the point where you just end up saying like, I don't need to see this anymore.
Mhm. And I think it's great for the analysts. They're not only bought into what you're doing at 7AI, but also just the trust in kind of AI in
Yeah.
general.
Well, I think
Um,
the other, I'm sorry to interrupt, but like the
that's right.
other point that's interesting about that is, one of the things that we're hearing is, it's very hard to get mid-career or senior people in cybersecurity. But if you're the kind of organization, we've talked to a lot of these, that they're pulling people from other functions that are really early in their career that want to get into cyber. And they're saying, well, wait a second, we can actually use this to train people, right? So they are able to see what, a world-class analyst would do. And they're using that as their training mechanism, and then understanding, okay, this is what someone would do. And imagine just sitting behind the screen and seeing exactly what any analyst would do, how they would think about it, what they would do next. And then they can actually take that code, they can test it themselves, understand that. So, like, it's not only the trust thing, but it's also a mechanism to bring people up to speed. to be able to really do that understanding. Because I think one of the big worries about using AI is, well, how are we going to now bring new people in, give them the set of skills to understand what they're doing, to be that, L2, L3, or someone that is even more general than, in the SOC analyst career trajectory. They want to do something more broad. But imagine that as your training path. So it's an interesting byproduct, but it's something that our customers are actually using in their training path for new people that are coming into cyber.
Because it's not just kind of upskilling, it's like that constant growth and constant
Yeah.
learning as well. Yeah, that's insane. Obviously, we've spoken then quite generally about agentic AI. I would love to, I guess, hear more specifically about kind of like 7 AI. Could you walk me through, I guess, any recent case study deployment of where maybe 7 AI specifically has made that impact?
Yeah, I'll give one where I love this one, which is very, very large company, 250,000 employees.
Wow.
And one of the things that they couldn't do is hire more analysts, right? They can't keep up with their alert volume. They do a lot of business overseas and in countries where they're constantly getting attacked, and they can't possibly keep up. And so they started a POC with us on Monday. And then I think it was Thursday, it might have been Wednesday, doesn't matter. We get on the call with them. And generally, what we'll do is start doing the investigations, taking in alerts, whatever, and then get on the call and just run through something and just explain what we saw. And um, we get to the call, and they're like, you can stop right there. You do not need to go over any investigations. We've gone through a lot of them. We couldn't find a single place where the AI is wrong. And then they're
Wow.
saying, now let's move to this other one and this other use case. And then what about this bespoke one? And this is what we're seeing everywhere. And so that's on the very large. Um, there's another organization that they have a mandate from their board. And this is like something we see in news stories a lot now, which is you can't hire someone unless you prove to me that AI can't do it. Right. And that's something we're seeing a lot. And they're saying, I need an AI strategy. I don't know what to do. And so we worked with them and we said, all right, let's go after these 3 use cases. And so within a week, they were able to say, okay, not only am I solving a problem, but I'm presenting this to the board and showing that now security is the innovator and driving our organizational AI strategy. And so now
Wow.
the CISO is seen as the leader in this like whole transformation thing that the entire org is trying to do. And everyone's coming to security and saying, where else can we do this? And then the last one I'll say, and I'll take a breath here, is smaller company, 1,000-ish, I think, employees, something around there. And they were using an outsource provider, right? So they have a very small security team, like 2 people. So they're using an MDR. They're handing over 1,000 alerts a day. They get back 150. Out of those 150, 75%, 75 of those are false positives. Out of the rest, they still can't keep up. And so they're saying, I don't know why I'm paying all of this money. I'm not happy with the results and I still can't deal with it. So they came to us and we kind of ran in parallel with their MDR. And not only did we do it faster and get rid of all those false positives, but we also found things that they completely missed.
Wow.
And so this was just one of those realizations where they're like, okay, so it's faster. I'm going to save money and you're finding things they didn't find. Like, what's the catch? So it is like, it's a new world. It's all so new to people, but like, it's one of those technologies where when you see it, you're saying, okay, this actually works in production now. It's not something that is just like a marketing buzzwordy promise. And I can replace stuff and it makes my people better. Like, okay, what am I missing here?
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think the why people have made that shift from kind of the traditional SOC over to this AI powered, I guess, new kind of AI agents being a teammate kind of, I guess, concept? It's that it's taken up so much kind of manpower plus human error is a thing as well.
Yeah, so I think it's a couple of things that are kind of coming together all at once. One is you're seeing alert volumes not only steadily increase but exponentially increases in some cases. Like I don't think we're there yet everywhere where people are seeing a 3x spike, but in some industries we really are. So you're seeing this huge increase. At the same time, you're getting pressure to not spend more money, so you're not having unlimited budgets. You're also getting pressure not to increase your headcount. At the same time, you're getting a mandate from your board. And if you listen to any public company earnings call, I dare you to find one that doesn't have something about using AI to drive efficiency, right? So all of those things are coming together at the same time. Then you're looking at people that are doing the job right now saying, like, I'm burning out, I'm going somewhere else. I didn't get into cybersecurity to bounce URLs off VirusTotal. Like, that wasn't why I got into this in the first place. I want to do the strategic stuff. I want to do hunting. I want to find things that no one else finds. I want to do the complex investigations, right? So you put those all together, and then at the same time, the technology is ready. It just makes total sense.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And obviously, this is a quite, I guess, new concept as
Yeah.
well over the last few months, maybe kind of a year, but
Yeah.
mostly in the last few
I mean,
months.
before a year ago, we didn't have the concept of AI agents. We had Gen
Yeah.
AI, and I think the introduction to everyone that was, kind of innovative, progressive, forward-looking, whatever, was using copilots,
Hmm.
right? And so in that case, it was you give smart people a tool to ask smart questions, and you could get like a 30% increase in their productivity, which is great. But it wasn't like a 3 or 4 or 10 or whatever X. And so I think that was great, and it let people dip their toes into understanding like AI can do a really good job at doing the reasoning and returning something useful. And now but it can take it a step farther and actually do the work. And I think the other thing that is really interesting to me is it's a big change in expectations. That to me is the biggest change that AI brings. Is I now have the expectation of if I'm looking to buy a product or service, how much work can it do for me?
Hmm.
Which no one ever did before. You buy a product because you're saying, I want to do things, a little bit better. I want to be, 30% more efficient, right? But now we're saying it takes work away that I don't want my people to do. And software just didn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, even on the, like, obviously we're kind of headhunters, but even
Yeah.
on the recruitment side, anything that can automate the processes that it takes time, effort, emails,
Yeah.
everything like that. If we can automate that, it means that we're talking to more people, we're able to do the tasks that actually one makes us money, but
Yeah.
also we yeah, build those
So I have
relationships.
a great example of that. So outside of cyber entirely, I was talking to this one company that does exactly what you're saying, which is for HR, they're looking specifically in recruitment. And what they do is they have an AI agent that looks through all of the resumes. It then
Wow.
understands based on what your job description says, um, is does this candidate have the requisite skills that are bottom baseline? Because right now, and this is a perfect parallel to cyber, right? So it's really easy for anyone to use AI to apply to any job. Doesn't matter if they're qualified or not. It really doesn't matter. And so you're seeing a huge increase in job applications because it doesn't take any extra effort to submit everywhere. So that's on the kind of think of that as being on the offensive side, on the hacker side, right? And then on the other end, you're saying, okay, I can use the same technology, AI agents, to sift through, understand is this someone that is qualified? Did they meet the requirements? Are they in the location that we say that you've got to be in? And do they have 8 years of experience for this role, or did they have like? So you can just do that, and it's a huge filter mechanism to then say you should look at these ones. And so I think that's a really good
Yeah.
example of how it's like really largely applicable anywhere.
Exactly. It's just cutting out the noise. I
Yeah,
think that's, I'm sure my director and CEO will listen to this and say
yeah,
that as well. If you can cut out the noise, and like you said there, you get 30% of your time back, it makes such a difference to our days, security, anything.
of
So
course.
yeah, and like we just said, it is such a new concept as well. And I know when we've kind of previously spoken, you said actually that 7 AI specifically actually delivered its platform a few months ahead of kind of the
Yeah.
schedule of the actual release date.
We were
Yeah.
originally looking to launch the company in May or June. And in the course of our POCs, we were seeing not only were we way ahead, one of the craziest things was, we started off with these like very specific use cases. So let's say we had 5 use cases and we wanted to just get really, really good at those.
Mhm.
And then we said this other customer had something that we hadn't built yet. And we said, you know what? Why don't we just see what happens? And I remember because we were in a board meeting, and then someone from our product team came in and said, I just want to let you guys know that on this other use case, we just sent the alert to the AI and it knew how to investigate it.
Wow.
We didn't do any training. We did nothing. It automatically knew what the next step was. Now, it didn't have a connection to the data source to do like the next or third step or whatever,
Mhm.
but it already was ready to start doing that. And another example that I had is on one of them, just doing a regular investigation, the AI said, well, actually, this was a red team exercise. What? Yeah, yeah. It identified that it was a red team exercise. It was someone internal. It just knew it. We're saying, whoa. So it's beyond our like pretty high bar of expectations. And we said, what are we doing? And we decided to launch in February. And so on my end, I was like, okay, that's a great idea. I really think we should do it. Let's do all of the work that we were going to do for May or June now. And so we got, you know, the website ready, got everything else
Mhm.
ready and got ready to launch. But I've never been at a company that launched earlier than we expected. And so on the optimistic and the good end of it, it was great. I'm glad we did it. And now that we have paying customers that wouldn't have happened between now and then, on the other end, we're like, okay, now we got to do everything. but
Yeah.
but you know, we did it, and I'm glad we did. But that was a new one for me. I'd never heard of that.
I guess it was kind of, or from what I understand of it, like learning and growing in its own time.
Yeah.
So yeah, and which is insane, but I mean, you were able to do it and launch successfully. So definitely a positive there.
Yep. And to me, you know, there's a lot of companies coming out now using AI, and for us, it's you know, I think there will be a winner in this market. I think just because the technology works, because it's saving so much time and returning so much ROI, like you know, there will be a company that wins this market, and I think whoever gets the momentum fastest
Mhm.
has the best shot at winning. We hope it's us. We're doing everything to make that happen. But with that, I think you have to be as fast as you can to market. Obviously, the product has to work and it has to be better than what else is out there. But I also think every day that went by where we were still in stealth, you know, I woke up in the morning a little bit worried. So I'm glad I don't have that anymore. Now it's I wake up in the morning and I'm saying, there aren't enough hours in the day, but
Yeah,
you know, I get up at 4 a.m. And then when I get home, I'm like, all right, let's do this again tomorrow.
do it again.
So it's a lot of fun, but I've never seen both technology and markets move to both adoption and maturity like this. It used to take the model used to be we're going to spend a year developing this thing in stealth, then we're going to get a couple of early customers, and then you know the next year we're going to build the sales team, and now that's we're going to spend a few months, then launch, and then hire a sales team, and then immediately start going after and landing big customers all within the same year.
Well, even those like what three case studies you gave me a little bit earlier just shows what I know. One of them was this week, and I'm assuming kind of the others were obviously quite soon. How quickly you can be successful if you've got the
Yeah,
good product, the right team, and I guess the kind of the want for growth and success, and the factors really driving that. So yeah, I
yeah,
mean, you've obviously done incredibly well in the last kind of what 4 months or so.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, excuse me. Well, the other part too is, I think in the past with cybersecurity products specifically, one of the biggest issues was how long it takes to deploy, right? So imagine back in the world of like EDR or anything with an endpoint agent. So you go to that customer with 250,000 employees and you're saying we have to put something on every machine. I mean, that's going to take a year minimum.
Mhm.
But in the world where all you have to do is connect to APIs, it's the only time it takes is do you have the credentials and can you set up a user? And once you have that, then it takes no time at all. And you can go to a company at that scale and get set up and complete a POC in a couple of days. Like that wasn't possible before.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that again, you've only obviously been kind of, I guess, on the market for the last kind of 4 months or so. What do you kind of see next for like 7AI? What does the next, I guess, 6 to 12 months look like? And then even further beyond that?
So I think it's two things. The first is on the product side, it's just broader coverage of the different use cases. And like I said, we started with a few of them. And then in every case, a customer would say, well, what about this? What if you added this use case? Or even broader than, SOC, or even broader than security, right? If we can do things with ticketing systems, then you could be a more general IT use case, or we have a lot of GRC conversations. So I think the first part is just like going broader. And then the second part is just adding to that momentum and going to and working with more customers, right? I'm sure that's kind of obvious, but like we go into a customer and instead of saying, use our product in this specific way, and that's how you do it, like you would a product company, we're more like a services company where we'll go to a customer and say, what are you looking to solve? And in that way, it's more like a consultative services sale. And so we're just going there and trying to understand where can we get those quick wins, not only so that you can see that the product works, but also, like I mentioned on that earlier one, we want to put security in a position where they're seen as the innovator and they're the ones that are driving efficiency. Because for too long, I think security has been a cost center. It's been something where, you just add more products and it's really, really difficult to quantify the value of not getting hacked. But instead, if we're saying like, this is the example of how to be more efficient, how to be more effective, it then puts security in the position of they're the leader. Now, how do we do this in HR? And how do we do this in marketing? And how do we do this in sales or finance or whatever? And now they're leading that charge. So to me, like being able to do more use cases, but also put that CISO in the position where they're seen as the leader and really driving that transformation, like that's really what we want to do. So it's a different approach, and we're learning how to do it. And it's a very different sale than just give me a product and I'm going to go after everyone in the market and say, buy my product. It's more of I want to sit down with a CISO and really understand where that pain is. And if we can get those quick wins for them, it's great for both of us. And then we can build things that we hadn't thought of.
Exactly. And I think just to touch upon that again, that this is really giving the opportunity for security to lead the way.
Yeah.
And everything else will kind of follow in suit. So yeah, that's fantastic. And well, this has been a great conversation. We always kind of, I guess, end podcast with thinking about how can listeners kind of learn more about 7AI and engage with either the platform or the team. Where would you recommend them kind of go in?
Sure. Yeah. You can always first go to 7ai.com. The second is we're very active on LinkedIn, and we're about to be even more active on LinkedIn. Like I mentioned, so we were talking to lots of CISOs before we ever came out of stealth. And one of the things that I would say is, obviously we want you to try out the product, all that stuff. And would you want to do a podcast episode? We didn't have a podcast. And so what was wild to me is people are so interested in innovation, in trying to make security the leader and all of that stuff. We had the 7 episodes recorded before we ever launched the thing, and we're launching it like next week.
Wow.
So you're going to start seeing those episodes coming out in the next like 2 weeks. So you'll see those on LinkedIn, but I would first of all check out 7AI on LinkedIn, but also feel free to connect with me. Obviously, I love talking about this stuff. I could talk for days, and I do. I'm about to go to the Gartner Summit and talk to 4,500 of my closest friends about what we're doing and just AI in general. So I love this stuff, and even if it's not about 7AI specifically, I'd love you to check us out. But even if it's not, I love just having the conversations around using AI. I do a ton of video stuff with AI, and you can see like my tutorials and what I'm doing there. So connect with me and check us out on 7ai.com and on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of Secure Insights. I'm excited to see the journey and everything and where you're going to go next.
All right. Thanks so much. This was fun.
Thanks so much. Okay. Bye-bye.